Okay. First off, I'm going to say I've never shared my testimony other than to Tiffany, Peggy, and another close friend of mine. Okay, so you kind of guys got to bear with me a little bit. You know, feels kind of sick to my stomach right now. Just nerves, but I know that the Holy Spirit's going to lead me through this. So I do have like some notes, so just kind of got to bear with me because I'm really nervous. Today I want to talk about how the enemy has really strategized in my life. He has attempted to destroy, steal, and conquer everything that he put in front of me. Okay? So around a year ago, I had made the conscious decision that I would create no more self-created prisons. Okay? I kept continually building up walls, and I decided that I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't hold it all in anymore. Okay? I had decided that there would be no more choices that I would be the one to make, where I would continually cause myself to self-destruct. I had to make the conscious decision to say that there would be no more lies that I would listen to from the enemy, because that's what the enemy did throughout my entire life. Is he would lie to me and lie to me and lie to me, and I would believe it. Sorry, I'm like, okay. So right before I was introduced to the attic, I was introduced to the attic in June of this year. Okay. Right before I was introduced to the attic, I had a special friend, Clarissa, who she kind of took on the role of the big sister kind of to me. She had led worship at our church, and she'd kind of taken on the role of the big sister to me. Well, we did it wasn't really an all-night worship thing out in League City, but it was for a good majority of the night that she was leading. And so she had invited me to go with her. So I was like, okay, let's do this. She was leading the worship, and during the worship she was talking about the pool of Bethsaida. Okay. I don't know if any of you guys know the story, but basically there was a crippled man that was lying on the ground. I guess from what I understand, there would be angels that would come in, stir the pool, and anyone who would go into the pool would be healed. Okay. Well, this crippled man could not go into the pool and be healed. And so it seemed like everyone would get there faster than him, and he just wasn't able, no one would help him, no one would pick him up and carry on. And, I had gotten to the point where I was feeling like everyone else around me was being healed besides me. And it's like, why, God? Why is everyone else around me feeling wonderful and being healed, but why am I still broken? Okay? Well, Jesus came to the man, and he told the man, have faith, get up and walk. And the guy had faith. He got up and walked, and he healed. And so that really touched me that night, that story about, the pool. And I really felt, after hearing this, that was kind of Jesus' way of saying, get up and walk. Be healed. You can't just sit around not doing anything. You have to get up and do it. You have to walk by faith. And that's really what Jesus was telling me, was you have to walk by faith. It's so easy to say, I believe in God, but if you're not actually having the faith, what's really the point of believing? Okay? So, a few weeks later, I was introduced to the attic. Okay? I still remember the first week that I was here. Tiffany was recapping. Guy, I guess, had been teaching about sharing your testimonies. We were getting ready. The following week was going to be the first week of Green Meadows. Tiffany was recapping Guy's talks that he had been doing about sharing your testimony, going out, and evangelizing. Okay? I have a strong heart for missions. I have a strong heart for evangelism. So that really was kind of like the hook, line, and sinker for me. That it's like, oh, okay, this group is about evangelism. That really makes me want to, maybe consider it more, just because I have the heart and I want to go out and I want to do it all the time. That night Tiffany was kind of talking about the prayer appointments, kind of like how Peggy did today, just giving kind of an example. And I remember I had never heard of anything like that. It's like, what's a prayer appointment? I've never heard of anything like that. So I just kind of had this calmness about my spirit, and I was like, I need to ask. I need to find out, what is this about? What is this prayer appointment about? Okay, so I went and I talked with Tiffany, and she had explained what the prayer appointments were about. So I felt like I really just I needed to do this. I needed to do something. I knew I needed to do something. I had been still for so long that I just needed to do something. So through the grace of God and a lot of hard work, I am able to stand here today, strong in my confidence in the Lord and his astonishing healing, and say that it is possible to break strongholds, and it is possible to disengage from the enemy's lies and align with the truth of our Father. Sorry, I was crying. You know, it's crazy how even little things that happen when we're little can really impact who we are and who we become as we grow up. In a perfect world, parents represent trust and parents represent security. What the enemy attempts to do is he attempts to break any kind of trust and any kind of security that you have, because you correlate the way your parents are with how God will treat you. So when I was 5 years old, I have a very vivid memory of waking up in the middle of the night to my mother and my grandfather yelling at each other. My mother would say things like, "We're going to take Granville and the kids and go live under a bridge rather than live here with you." And at 5 years old, that's the scariest feeling in the world, to think that your trust and your security is going to be taken away from you. So I ran into my father's room, and I just cried, and I cried, and I cried, because I was terrified of having that trust and security taken away from me. What the enemy does is he attempts, and I say attempts, to crack away at any kind of foundation that we have when we're most impressionable as children. If he can slip into a crack, he's able to magnify it. And if he's able to magnify it, he is able to do so much with that crack. And he is able to turn that crack against us. So at that age, I had began to build my first wall. I aligned myself with the lie that my Heavenly Father would do the same to me. When I was maybe 6 or 7, I was sexually abused by a neighborhood friend. This is when I began to allow the enemy to tell me lies that I would continually believe, when the enemy had no right to lie to me, because the lies that the enemy would tell me were not the truth. This began another huge crack in the foundation of who I was and who I was to become. By the age of 10, I was introduced to church. I had met my best friend Shannon, and she was really an influential part in my walk with the Lord. I had started to really build walls at that time. I had really started to build walls, but at this time I was starting to really learn the truth of who Jesus was and who he is, and he's forgiving and he's devoting, he's loving and he's assuring. And so at this time I began to really understand Jesus' love for me. Okay, and it was deep rooted in me, the morals and teachings of Jesus that I would eventually fall away from and rebel against. The seed was planted when I was a child, because my Father knew that later on it could be watered when I was ready to further his kingdom for his glory rather than my own. I came back to the Father, and that's not what the enemy wants. That terrifies the enemy more than anything. The closer you get to God, the harder the enemy strategizes against you. And the enemy knew that the only way to really get me was to steal my identity, my self-worth, and make me a reject and an outcast to the world. My family, no matter what, has always and will always support me. Through traumas that would occur, to just things that would happen. You know, they always built me up when they could have torn me down. The enemy attempted to kill, steal, and destroy every relationship that I would make. Not only did the enemy attempt to steal my security from my parents, but my brothers as well. Throughout the process of rekindling my relationship with my oldest brother, William, I had to learn to take part in my disconnect with him. You know, it's kind of like the saying, it takes two to tango. You know, he'll be the first to tell you that any memory we have together is not good. We can't even tell you one single good memory from when we were kids. He bullied me a lot when we were younger. Yeah, I mean, brothers do that, but it had gotten to the point where my middle brother, Marcus, my sister-in-law's husband, had to kind of step in and take the role of the protector in my life. So I had to learn that I was not going to be the victim and that I could not stay the victim. And that's something that I had to work through Tiffany with, about not having that victim mentality. The family bond that I have with William, my oldest brother, is stronger than I had realized. Even though we never got along, even though he always bullied me, he always put me down. When I was at rock bottom, he never tried to push me further. He never tried to push me further down. He was always there for me through some of my most troubling times. And he loved me no matter what. He just didn't know how to show it. Some guys don't. Can't help it. It's just in their genes, I guess. I guess so. Let me start off by saying my dad is my rock. He represents Jesus Christ in my life. When I was younger, we never had a good relationship. You know, he made the choice. He didn't realize that we were broken, but he made the choice to change in order to show me how much he really loved me. Our relationship has never been this good. His ability to change his behavior showed me that it's possible that I can do the same. It really showed me his true undying love for me. When I was younger, we used to play street hockey all the time. Okay? I grew up with two boys, so we played football, we played hockey. Yes, we played basketball. Like, I don't think you realize how much I like sports, Peggy. That's why I'm telling you, we gotta go play football.
Yes.
Yes, I'm telling you. You got it. I keep telling you. When's it gonna happen?
It's the first I've heard of street hockey. That is my sport.
Street hockey. We still have our sticks. We still have our balls.
36. Yes. Oh my
So
God.
let's do this. Let's do my cable. Let's do this. So one time, in specific that I can remember, the ball hit me in the face. Okay, I was probably the only girl. I actually was the only girl that was playing in our neighborhood. And I can remember thinking, I can't cry, because I know my dad, I know my brothers, and I know my uncle will give me a hard time for being such a girl. So I had to put on this mask. I had to say, and they gave me a hard time. They're like, "Oh, you thought that guy was cute?" And I was like, "I'm freaking like 7, like really." You know. But in reality, I was afraid to cry because I knew that they would give me a hard time about it. In my teens, my dad and I really had a rough relationship. I was not allowed to cry. He treated me like another one of the boys, rather than his little girl. So because I had 2 older brothers, you know, it's just like another one of the boys. I mean, to an extent that's okay, but to an extent, I felt it was hard. We were so much alike. We would end up getting into yelling matches. He would raise his voice and I would raise it. And hey, I'm not saying that's okay, because that's not, never yell at your parents, guys, ever. Like, disrespect, that's not okay. Anytime I would start crying because it really upset me that we were yelling, he would yell even more because he would get mad that I was crying. I did not feel cherished, though now I know I always have been. He's just a guy, he doesn't know how to show it. During the times I wasn't allowed to cry, I wasn't close with my dad, I began to resent him, began to hate him. The enemy used important relationships, such as my dad, such as William, my older brother, to speak down against my self-worth. It all comes down to rejection, lack of importance, and no self-worth. But God is a God of restoration. He brings everything full circle in His timing for His glory. I pray that I find a husband like my dad, the kind of man that is after God's own heart. My father is the Christian foundation of our household now. Anytime I have a question about God, anytime I want to know something about the Bible that I don't understand, I go to him. I ask him, hey, what does this mean? Can you help me with this? If he doesn't know the answer, he will look for the answer because it is important to him, my relationship with God. He's the kind of godly man that is rare in today's society. My father is a blessing from God. He's a true reflection of God's love. When I think about my dad's love, it reminds me of God's love for us. When I was 17, I decided to run away from home. I was mixed up in drugs. I was mixed up in bad influences. And that kind of led to fogged up views of what was really going on. Most of that time period in my life is a blur to me. Throughout my whole high school experience, there's 99% of it is chunked out black. Whether the drugs played a part, whether it was just my emotional stability, it doesn't matter because I made the choice to run away from the only people that actually cared about me. And I live with the consequences every day. The guilt, the shame, consumed. It makes it harder that I can barely remember, but I don't want to blame it. I don't want to say, it's just not drugs. No, I don't want to blame it because it was my choice. I willingly hurt the people that cared the most about me. I had to become accountable and learn the power to forgive myself. We hold ourselves to much higher standards than we do others. It's easier, some people, it tends to be easier to forgive others than it is ourselves. We hold ourselves, we hold it against us, and we just keep blaming us when we can't do that. If God, the God of restoration, the God of love can forgive you, why can't you forgive yourself? You're not better than God, so why can't you forgive yourself if He can forgive you? After I ran away, my dad made the strong effort of rekindling what he didn't know was broken. Whereas I couldn't cry anymore, now he hears my tears. Marcus, my middle brother, Strongwell's husband, he had taken on the role of the protector in my life. When I ran away, I didn't go to him. He was always the one that I went to for everything, but I didn't go to him. Who knows why? Only God. Maybe He'll reveal it to me one day. But I didn't go to him, and that hurt his trust and his security in me. I broke that. And that's something that I continually try to work to regain every single day because it's important to me. With my mother, we had a good relationship. When I was younger, I'd always felt loved. Something never happened, you scraped your knee or something. Someone was being mean to you. You went to her and she would kiss you and make you feel better. In my teens, when my dad and I would get into our arguments, she would always side with him, and I despised her for that. When in reality, now I understand that husband and wife have to be as one. Even if they don't always agree, they have to be as one because if a kid sees any kind of crack, they will use that against them. So now I understand, but at the time, I despised her for it because I felt like she was only agreeing with him because they were married. And that pissed me off. Excuse my language. Excuse my language. All throughout my middle school years, the enemy strategized against me. He knew that that little third grader, he needed to take that little third grader down as quick as he could, because he knew how radical I would be for my Father's kingdom. He would strategically place people in my life that would further my self-destruction. My self-destruction, because I was the one that did it. A classmate of mine, Sydney, had always persecuted me. She made fun of the way I looked. She turned my friends against me.